Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Tooting Bec station in southwest London to Westminster in central London. This ride takes about 35 minutes and you can do more or less the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. This route makes use of the newly upgraded Cycle Superhighway 7 and also a number of backstreets which you may not be aware of, so even if you think you know the route, do watch to see which way I go. If you find this video useful or you enjoy watching it, then do subscribe to the channel as I post new ones like it every week. Okay, let's get going. So we're starting outside Tooting Bec station and we're going to start heading south down the A24, which at this point is called Balham High Road. For the first section of this ride we're going to be following Cycle Superhighway 7, which is a Transport for London route. It's been in place for ages and it used to be terrible or worse than useless, but it's over the last year it's been upgraded by TfL and they've put in these wands and a few other things to make it a little bit more pleasant to ride. And I think you'll probably agree from the video that it's actually pretty good. You've got these protective wands and you've got these bus stop bypasses. And you can see that HGV on the right there is ably demonstrating that we are pretty well protected from most of the traffic. Even when it's not segregated, it's a very, very wide painted lane, which means that cars tend to keep their distance. And it also then suddenly becomes segregated again very quickly afterwards. So although it's patchy, I think it just about, for this section of the ride, hits the threshold of being quite a decent ride up and down this road. It certainly makes it a lot easier than it used to be. CS7 is actually a lot longer than the bit we'll be riding on today, and not all of it has been upgraded to be quite this good, but I think this bit's quite decent. By the way, these bus stop bypasses that we're going on, when you go over them, make sure you give way to pedestrians at the zebra crossings, because people need to cross onto those protective islands to board or disembark from the buses. There are brief bits where the lane gives up, so for instance around here, apparently you can't put the segregation wands on the zigzags in the run up to Pelican Crossings, as they have to be kept clear, and that explains some of the absence, but it's still not ideal. I hope that could be changed actually, maybe. Also, you're about to see coming up another issue. On some of the sections where there's no segregation, it's actually pretty common just to see vans parked in the lane. I'd love to say that that was, an unusual occurrence, but basically almost every other time that I've gone down here, you often see someone just parked up, even though it's a red route, they just do it anyway. So you're going to just have to take that into account. I still think this is the best route out of all the options, but it would be really great to have that fixed, either with better enforcement or just more segregation to stop them doing it. As you get further north of here, Cycle Superhighway 7 actually starts to get a lot worse and the upgrade hasn't been as complete. So we're going to turn off and take a backstreet route. The one you want has those little segregation wands here. Watch out for those, that's a good reminder of which road it is. It's called Alderbrook Road and it's also just before it starts to get into a big hill and before it dumps you in the bus lane. Unfortunately, we don't escape the hill. You have to go up the hill on Alderbrook Road as well. But it's definitely a lot nicer to be cycling up the hill on a relatively quiet residential street compared to a main road with buses and cars behind you. So definitely go this way. It isn't filtered, it is a through route for cars, but I filmed this at rush hour and it's relatively quiet. I didn't really run into much traffic and I saw a few cyclists using it, so I don't think it's too bad and it does the job. It's certainly better than going on the main road. What we're actually doing here is we're coming up around the back of Clapham Common, which we'll be joining in a second, and Clapham Common has a nice cycle path across it. Well, it's alright, it does the job, it's certainly better than going on the main road. So turn right onto Nightingale Lane, but then very immediately turn left into Nightingale Walk. And you might have noticed that we are actually at this point following a TfL route called Quietway 5. There are Q5 symbols written on the road and the odd sign, so do keep an eye out for those. Now, coming up on our right, you'll want to mount onto a shared pavement. You can see that blue and white sign, and you'll come up to this Tooting crossing. That's like a Pelican crossing, except you can see it's also got a cycle symbol, so it means it's both for pedestrians and cyclists. And you'll come into this path on Clapham Common. A word of warning about this particular bit of the path: the surface is really bad, it's very bouncy, and I actually nearly came off going on there even though I was going very slowly. And so do watch out, that definitely needs a resurface if anyone from the council is watching. But yeah, our current objective is to cycle to the other side of Clapham Common, and there are lots of different paths going off in lots of different directions, and the way to remember which way to go is just go straight on. At every opportunity you just want to go straight on. This route is basically just a straight line across the common. It's also worth noting that this is a shared path with pedestrians, so you'll of course run into lots of people walking, jogging, other people cycling, people with pushchairs, things like that. So be courteous to people, don't go too quickly, and give everybody a lot of space. There are quite a lot of people using this path for cycling every day, so most people who walk around here will be used to seeing people on bikes. But yeah, just give everyone a wide berth. There are a few different roads crisscrossing the common, and you have to cross them in different ways. So we already went across that first one on a Tooting crossing. Here there's a zebra crossing, and this really would be better replaced with a joint cycle zebra crossing. I don't think they were invented when that was put in, so it's just a regular zebra crossing. But when we get to the end of this path, we will see another Tooting crossing, and this path's a little bit narrow. But yeah, this one has another cycle symbol on it, so yeah, just wait there, press the button and wait for a gap, and you can see there's the green bike light symbol lighting up there. And then you go past this temperance fountain, which was put there to discourage people from drinking alcohol. Instead they were supposed to drink the nice fountain water, which would be nice. And you'll come to the third way of crossing, this is a joint cycle zebra crossing. Out of those three ways of crossing the road, the Tooting signalled crossing, the regular zebra crossing, and the joint zebra and cycle crossing, I think that third one, the joint zebra and cycle crossing, is by far the best. You don't have to wait, you get priority. The only thing I would say about it is not a lot of motorists know that you have priority, so just be careful when you're crossing it. Don't just throw yourself in front of the car, because they're not necessarily going to stop. We're back on Quietway 5 here, we're still following it. It's mostly a pretty good route, but this bit I don't think is great, unfortunately. It needs a bit of improvement. The roads are a bit too narrow, there's too much parking, and people who decide to drive around here have purchased cars that are too large for the roads that they wish to drive them on. So even though you're only going to run into like 1, 2, 3 cars, it becomes a big problem because they can't pass each other, and they all have to sort of let each other go. So yeah, this part of the route could definitely do with an improvement. I think it's a couple of roads back actually that a very nice Labour councillor from Wandsworth actually got her foot run over. So this is a bit of a hazard, this area, and it could definitely do with improvement. Maybe a filter to prevent through motor traffic, which would reduce the volume of traffic, or maybe removing some of the parking to increase the width of the usable width of the carriageway. Both of which are politically difficult. But we're now through that difficult section, and we're on Larkhall Rise now, which is very good. You can see we're going through a filter here. This is no entry for motor vehicles at both ends. And the result of that is that this whole road, which used to be a bit of a racetrack for cars, is now really quite quiet. It doesn't completely remove all the through traffic from it, but it removes a lot of the useful routes for motor traffic. So it really means that we've got a lot of space, and it's really quite quiet, very low traffic volumes for us, even at rush hour. This was filmed about sort of 9 o'clock, that sort of time in the morning. So yeah, we're okay. There is a guy up ahead doing something a bit weird. Not sure what he's doing there. He's sort of reversing and half in the cycle lane. Bit strange. But other than that, the road is generally really clear. And I think you'll find that no matter what time of day you come down here. I've never run into any issues here since that filter was introduced. So, by the way, if you enjoy this video, or you find it useful, or you know somebody who you think might find it useful, then do subscribe to the channel and tell your friends about it. I post new videos pretty much like this one every week, generally just doing A to B, showing you the best way to do it, trying to make the most of the, I think, rapidly improving London cycle network. It's getting better quickly. It sometimes feels slow, but it can be easy to forget how bad it was even like 5 years ago. There's been a lot of improvements. Yeah, and as always, if you want to see a map of the route, I obviously have post a picture map at the beginning and the end of the video, but if you need to download a digital version of the map that you can kind of load onto your device, a GPX file is available in a link in the description under the video, and you can download it from a website called Komoot, and you can either use it on their app, or you can just download it and use it in the app or device of your choice. Whatever you use, it should work with it. Now, we're still following Quietway 5, and just a word on the naming of this route. So TfL is actually phasing out the Quietway brand, and all the Quietway routes should soon be renamed Cycleway. So this, I think, will become Cycleway 5. and the signage and the paint on the road might change to say C5. I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but I know that they are gradually switching over all of the newer routes to the C Cycleway brand. So expect to see the Q brand disappear. That said, there are still a lot of there's like layer upon layer of different cycle networks in London. You can still see the old stuff from the GLC back in the 80s, and there's the London Cycle Network from the sort of 90s, early noughties. You often see those routes everywhere, and it can actually make wayfinding quite difficult sometimes because it's not clear what cycle symbols you're supposed to be following or what signs you're supposed to be following, and they can be a bit contradictory. Although I think the intention is to take out all the Quietways and replace them with cycleways, just in terms of naming, I wouldn't be surprised if something got in the way eventually, and there were still a few queues knocking about 20 years down the line or something like that. But that is, I'm told, the intention, to replace the queues with Cs. The reason the streets on this section of the route are so quiet, by the way, is because we're in the Oval Triangle low traffic neighbourhood. Basically, on the residential streets bounded by South Lambeth Road, Harleford Road and the A3, there's no through route for motor traffic, but there is a through route for cycles, so that keeps them nice and quiet for us cycling. We're just leaving that LTN now, and we're joining this rather nice cycle track outside Kennington Oval. And this is nice and wide, really well done, I think, and we're heading in the direction of Vauxhall. Two things about this track. The first is you'll notice that the track goes behind the bus stop, so if you see anybody trying to cross, obviously let them across. The second is, when I came down here, there was actually a diversion, but it's been really well done. Actually, I'd like to see that more when there's roadworks on a cycle path, instead of just stopping it and saying cyclists dismount, to just divert the cycles around it. Doesn't take that much extra effort from the contractors, but it makes life a lot easier for us. Now, we want to go into Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens. You can either use that Tooting crossing that's to my right there to go in through the front entrance, or you can go across here. When you cross the cycle track, make sure there's nobody coming. A word of warning about going this way though. You can see all this seating around. This area is sometimes closed off to be used for outdoor seating for the bars around here, so you might be better off just going straight through the Pleasure Gardens, right through the front entrance. You just have to wheel your bike on the pavement a little bit. But you end up in the same place either way. I've come into the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens from the side, and the aim is to exit it around the bit where the Boris bikes are, just here, and past the tea room. That takes you out onto a street called Vauxhall Walk, and that's characterised by these really nice rain gardens. That's what these flower beds are called. They're actually sustainable drainage systems, I believe. They basically help prevent flooding by giving somewhere for rainwater to go, and they also just look really nice. They're a lot nicer than a bit of parking or a little bit of asphalt, and I think they really brighten the place up. Yeah, rain gardens, you increasingly see them all over London, and I'd love to see even more of them. On this section of Quietway 5, which I think is really quite good, we're basically following the route of the South West Main Line out of Waterloo, between Waterloo and Vauxhall, and you might have noticed on the right there, you probably saw that red train just going past. That'll be a service out of Waterloo heading towards Vauxhall right now. And these railway arches here are obviously the arches on which the railway is carried, and there are some businesses in the arches, so you might see the occasional van or something coming out, but generally it's pretty quiet. I think you should be okay. Now, there is actually a parallel route to this on the other side of the river. What you could have done at Vauxhall is, instead of cutting through Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens and taking the Quietway, you could have gone over Vauxhall Bridge, which has very good cycle tracks on it, but then you would have to turn right and go east along the river towards Westminster on the north side, and that's along Millbank. Personally, I don't think that route is quite up to scratch, especially the roundabout on the north side of Lambeth Bridge, which isn't protected at all, and I just think this is a much nicer way of going. Also, there are a lot fewer traffic lights this way. You often have to wait at lights at the end of the bridge and stuff like that, and that junction can be a bit confusing. Here, nothing really stands in your way. You just go down here, down Carlisle Lane, and it's very, very quiet. Another way of doing it is via Hercules Street, which is this next street that will be coming up on the right. And then you join Royal Street, and you may be thinking, John, where are we? Like, you said we're going to Westminster. Apparently, according to the progress bar, we're nearly there, but it still looks like we're in suburbia. There's like an estate here. Where are we?
Actually, weirdly, we're going to pop out like very near the river any second. It really does feel quite residential, very, very close. That's actually St Thomas's Hospital just dead ahead of us. Now, we want to get into the cycle lane here. There's two ways you can do it. You can either use the pedestrian crossing there, you'd have to dismount, or you can wait at the mouth of that road and wait for the pedestrian crossing to trigger, and then simply cycle out because the traffic will have stopped. And that's the way that I did it in this video. And yeah, like magic, we've gone from sort of very suburban looking estate to Westminster Bridge roundabout. That's County Hall, or what the artist formerly known as County Hall, dead ahead of us. And there is Big Ben. That was a very rapid change of scenery, I think. We just sort of pop out of those quiet streets. Be really careful on these zebra crossings, by the way. People from the hospital will be wanting to get the bus, and you've really got to wait for them because that's a zebra crossing. They have priority crossing that bit of cycle track there. For now, there aren't any segregated lanes on Westminster Bridge. I think it's generally okay. There's just these painted lanes. There are actually plans to install the segregation there. So hopefully within the next year or so, those plans should have been implemented, and there should be protected lanes on this bridge. But that isn't the case for now. The only bad thing about it is that in the opposite direction, unfortunately, you tend to get pedicabs and ice cream vans parked in the lane, which can actually be quite dangerous because you have to swerve around them. But yeah, this is us, and we're here. We've made it to Parliament Square. I'm just going to dismount and just walk into the pavement here. And yeah, we've actually got it. So I hope you enjoyed that route. I hope you like it. I think it's really good. The CS7 section I was a bit unsure about for ages, the bit right at the beginning, but I actually think that the bit that we did is actually very good. I think most people will be happy riding that, and while there's still room for improvement, and you'll occasionally have to sort of swerve around the old van, I think it's generally really high quality, and the rest of it's good as well once you work out the way across Clapham Common. And then Quietway 5 I think is really great, apart from that one little bit just after Clapham Common, which definitely needs a bit of improvement. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. Do subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.